Thank you so much. I'm so glad that some of you took the time to come this afternoon anyway. Emily just walked in, and she's a gal that was over at our cooking class on Saturday. And it's so fun to see her here with her little one. I see we have some people that are probably here going to school, and then others that are just visitors, right? Or are you all here at the university? What are you doing? All at the university. It's so fun. I want to thank Tiffany. I've known her for probably about 5 years is what I think we figured out. And I want to thank her for inviting me. I adore this campus. I love it. And I love to come on a beautiful day like today and look at this view. Oh my goodness, you're all so lucky. You're all so lucky to go to the U. My husband actually graduated from the U. And I was attending the business college down the street, not too far, and I was up on campus a lot when I was young. So why am I here? Why was I invited? Actually, about 15 years ago, I was driven to write a cookbook. And the reason why was because my husband and I had already raised 7 children. And he was a pilot in the Air Force, and then for Delta Airlines. And I was basically a single mom for about 60% of my life because he was gone. It was a great job. We got to show our kids the world. It was wonderful. But it got so, all of my friends, other pilots' wives were like, why do you cook? Why do you bother cooking? Our husbands are gone flying. Who cares? Let's just eat cereal and eggs and chicken nuggets and whatever we can buy that's already prepared. Who cares? The men are gone, so it doesn't matter. But you know what? I cared because I was raised in a home that had dinner every night. My mom and dad got together and they brought us kids around the dinner table, and there was nothing that meant more to me ever. And I thought, even though my husband's gone, I'm going to do this. Even though I had just babies, of course. When we went into the Air Force, he was a captain in the Air Force and soon became a pilot. We had our first baby, and he's flying off everywhere, and I'm stuck home with the kids as they start to come. But I wanted the same situation that I knew that I had when I grew up. And so I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop cooking. So from the time our first one was in a high chair, I'm sitting there with the first one. We're looking each other in the eye. He's in his high chair. I'm at the table. But we're having a nutritionally sound meal. And he's eating what I'm eating. As soon as he can eat, before 1 year old. I had my little baby grinder, and I'm grinding the food up. So that's how I fed my kids. Did anybody even know what they are nowadays? They're these little baby grinder things, and you put, food grinders, and I put whatever it is I'd made for that day, the vegetables, the meat, whatever it was, ground it up and fed it to him. And that's how I fed every kid. And that's why every single one of my kids eat everything. Because from the get-go, I fed them delicious food. Not only delicious food, but super healthy food. So as the years went by, about 7 years, 6, 7 years into marriage, I decided I can't keep eating the way I'm eating. Because what I was doing was making meat the star of the meal. Because that's the way my mom and grandmas did. That's the way it was way back when. Especially if you raise cattle every single night. And my grandparents did. So every single night was meat. That was the star of the plate. And then what ran around with the meat? Well, usually a potato, hardly ever rice, or if you're lucky, some vegetables. But it was meat and potatoes, okay? I'm like, I don't want to eat like this every night. So in thinking about, a few more kids came along, and thinking about what I could do, I came up with a meal plan. And I went to a nutritionist, and I checked it out. And I began studying about nutrition myself. And I got into it, and remember back when I was raising my kids, there's no internet, there's no Food Network. All there is a library, your mom's recipes, your grandma's recipes, your aunt's recipes, and the magazines. That's it. Go to the library, find out the information. You can't look anything up on the internet. So I'm studying at the library, I'm collecting information, I'm talking to nutritionists that already had degrees. So about 6 years into it, I came up with a meal plan. A lot of people for years, I think, thought that my meal plan was kind of corny. People thought that theme nights were a gimmick. They're finding out today that theme nights are no gimmick, that they actually make sense. And because the hardest part about dinner is trying to figure out what to cook, right? It's the hardest part about dinner. So for me, almost being a single mom with a husband, a pilot who's flying off 60% of my life, I had to figure out how to make a meal plan. So this is what I did. I did not know when I made my meal plan that it was going to become a lifestyle. I had no clue. I'm so grateful it did, but I had no clue. So what I did, I started out first, I started with, and I'm gonna write Friday here. Whoops, is this right? Maybe it doesn't. Okay, so Friday on my meal plan became pizza night. Saturday became grill night. And Sunday down here became tradition day. So really quick, why did I choose those in the beginning? Well, I chose pizza night on Friday because our first one, when he came home from school in first grade and it was Friday, I said, what do you want to eat? And he said, pizza. So I thought, pizza's got a real downer connotation right now. Everybody thinks it's bad for you. This is back in the 70s. Pizza was a bad food. Way too much meat, you know, this much meat, this much cheese, this thick a crust. Had a bad rap, pizza did. But I had been to Italy, and I knew how to make the real kind of pizza. I knew you could do super thin crust, which is super good. And I knew that the Italians dispersed their ingredients evenly. And I knew that if you disperse the ingredients evenly and very few, it was pretty darn healthy. The first super healthy pizza I ever ate, I was in Rome. And I said, what is your most nutritional pizza? I said, just surprise me. And he brought me a pizza, and you know the normal size if you've been to Italy, like this. And it had rocket, they called it back then, which we now sort of call arugula. Many people still do call it rocket. It had fresh mozzarella cheese on the bottom that had been baked with the crust. And then on top of it, they put fresh rocket and fresh tomatoes and olive oil and fresh salt and pepper. I put it into my mouth. I'd never seen greens on top of a pizza. So this is years and years ago. I still say today, I'm the one that brought the arugula and tomato pizza to America. I was the only one making it forever. Anyway, that's sort of my signature pizza. It kind of became my #1 pizza. But back in the 70s, pizza was not considered nutritionally sound, but it sure is today. In my second book, I don't think I have one pizza with red sauce on it. It's all olive oil based and vegetables, very little meat, vegetables, because the Italians, they will make anything out of a pizza. If they have leftover potato, leftover kale, it's going on a pizza. Mushrooms is going on a pizza. Just onions is going on a pizza. Any vegetable you can think of, just going on a pizza, super healthy, with olive oil, amazing sea salt, ground black pepper. So I knew how to make pizza healthy. My kids loved the pepperoni and the sausage and all that, and that was great. But we made a variety of pizza so that we weren't just getting the really, you know, too many calorie pizzas. Saturday became grill night, and the reason why was because my husband was usually gone Friday and Saturday. And for me, grill night was super easy because the kids wanted hamburgers or hot dogs or sloppy joes or grilled chicken or I've got grilled chicken on Saturday night. I do have sloppy joes. Of course, hamburgers, hot dogs, all of that. And then we started grilling fish. So grill night was super fun and great. In the wintertime, all those recipes could be made in the oven. Sunday became tradition day. The reason why for me, I was living 3,000 miles from home. I wanted to make my mom's Sunday pot roast, my grandma's Sunday fried chicken, all the meals that we were raised on, that we got together as a family and ate on Sunday. We made all those meals, and then we sat around the table like we did every night, looked each other in the eye, and talked about the week, and talked about our relatives who lived far away, so that we kind of kept them in the loop because we were 3,000 miles from home. So I was talking to a nutritionist, and I was living this. And she gave me the idea, why don't you expand what you're doing? Because this was automatic for the first 7 years of marriage. She said, why don't you expand? I thought, I should. But I said, with rules. I need some hard, fast, nutritionally, budget-friendly, sound rules. So these are my rules that I came up with. First, I'll tell you what I expanded with. I went to the kids and the family when my husband was home. We discussed what we liked. The kids were growing up now. So Monday became comfort food night. It sort of went with tradition, and I loved it, because what I found out as a young mother, if you didn't cook on Monday night, the rest of the week went down the tubes. You didn't cook the rest of the week. You made an excuse. I was a pilot's wife. He was never home. The kids don't care what we cook. So Monday was very important for me to have another great meal. And Monday's such a hard week after a weekend. You know, after a fun weekend or just a relaxing weekend, Monday's hard to get back into the grind. And I wanted another comfort food meal that would call everybody home. And that meant something when I had teenagers. And that meant something when I had a husband who was out on the road and came home to delicious meals. Tuesday became Italian night. That didn't mean pizza. That meant pasta most of the time, or my Italian baked chicken and potatoes, or piccata, or marsala, something like that on Italian night. Never pizza, okay? Then Wednesday became Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, I didn't make room for Thursday. Wednesday became fish, meatless, or breakfast night. Okay, why I did this was because I knew after my study that the human body really did well with fish, fresh fish. And I knew that fresh fish was brain food. And I knew that I needed to get my kids accustomed to it, tasting it, and liking it before too long, before they turned their nose up and said, I don't like it. So a fresh fish meal was expensive. Back in the day, there was no Costco. There was no Sam's Club. It was expensive. It was over the counter to buy fresh fish. So the M means meatless. If you hate fish, or you're a vegetarian, you don't include fish in your vegetarian regime, then we eat meatless. That means vegetarian. So we need a couple of times a week, at least out of 7, you're either eating fish or vegetarian meals. No meat. Why? Because we need to give our body a break from meat. And we never eat red meat back to back. That's another Food Nanny rule. We'll talk about that in a minute. Breakfast I put on that night. Does anybody know why? Have an idea? It was cheap. It cost nothing. Cost nothing to make eggs. Cost nothing to make homemade pancakes, homemade waffles, homemade French toast, homemade German pancakes. It was so inexpensive. So if I make a 2-week menu, a week is too short, a month is too long. I found out for me 2 weeks was perfect. So as I'm making my menu, I may be doing a fresh fish meal, and tuna fish casserole does count in there as fish. I may be making a fresh fish meal on this week, and the next week having breakfast. So that now it's cheap, it's counterbalanced. So this is how I was getting fish into my family at least every other week, maybe even on Saturday. When Costco came around, now I'm buying much more fish. whitefish, salmon, whatever kind of fish you love, all kinds of fish that I could afford. Probably the one on sale most of the time. But now I can have it here, I can have it here, I can have it in an Italian dish that might be a pasta that includes it. I can have it here in something. I can eat meatless anywhere, because in my books, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which became Mexican at night, in my books, on every single night, I'm offering meatless meals. And I'm not eating the same thing at all. I'm eating this incredible variety of food that turns into a lifestyle. I'm not eating pasta back to back, but maybe I'm eating it once a week or once every other week, because it doesn't mean I'm always choosing pasta on Tuesday. I might choose homemade mac and cheese on Monday, and that might be my pasta for the week. So the next day I might choose marsala to cook on that night. Mexican night was Thursday, and I loved Mexican night because I was raised in California. I had a ton of beautiful, beautiful Mexican friends who taught me how to make the best chicken tacos in the world, as well as other Mexican meals. So I couldn't live without my Mexican food, and I love it because it's so healthy. What's more healthy than rice and beans? You can have it vegetarian style, you can add chicken, you can do fajitas, you can do whatever. You can do everything with Mexican. So if you don't like my nights, then just choose your nights. But what I'm here to tell you is the theme nights are not a gimmick, because the hardest part about dinner is trying to figure out what to cook. And if you make up your own theme nights because you don't like mine, just stick to them and get yourself the recipes that you do love that go underneath. I can make a 2-week menu in 5 minutes. I'm done. Then I create my shopping list, and because I'm making food on a consistent basis, my shopping list it gets smaller and smaller, because when I see something on sale, I'm grabbing it. I'm grabbing something that I'm running out of that I see on sale. And when I'm making my shopping list, the money that I'm going to spend at the store is next to nothing. I'm getting away with such little money. I'm saving money. I'm banking money. I'm saving money for a trip to travel. I'm saving money to buy some new jeans. I'm saving money for a kid's pair of shoes. I am saving money to make my car payment, my house payment, my electric bill. So through the years, as I have taught people to live the theme nights and to go to the store with a grocery list, if they're spending $600 on food, they're now spending $300. If they're spending $300, they're now spending $150. Because if you go to the grocery store with a grocery list and make one main shopping trip and only go back, get everything you need, one main shopping trip, bring the meat home. If you've got meat, put it in the freezer, take care of it. What vegetables don't last 2 weeks? Yes, you might have to go back for more fresh tomatoes, maybe some greens. What kind of vegetables are you cooking with your meals? In my books, I tell you what to serve with everything. I give you ideas for side dishes. I give you ideas for vegetables. I always served at least 2 vegetables with every meal, except for with pancakes or homemade waffles. I'm serving 2 vegetables at least. I'm serving frozen, fresh, or canned. Yes, canned, because guess what? You didn't know that a lot of those canned goods were actually had more nutritional value still left in them than a lot of the fresh you think is so fresh. Because when talking to farmers about broccoli, the day it's picked, super good. The next day, it starts losing 1/3 of its nutritional value. I'm talking to the canned people. They're telling me, are you kidding me? When we put those vegetables in that can, they're at top nutritional value and sealed and packed. And of course, this is how we feed the world with canned goods. So I could never be down on canned goods. This is how we feed the world. We can't feed them with frozen or fresh. So how did I do it when I was raising my family? I might be doing a frozen and a fresh and a canned, a frozen and a canned, whatever it was. Because I'm never without canned goods for emergency, and because I prefer canned green beans over any green beans. I prefer frozen peas over any frozen peas unless they're coming right out of my garden. So I'm buying what's on sale for fresh vegetables as well. So what doesn't last 2 weeks? Potatoes last, carrots last in the fridge. Tomatoes you never put in the fridge. You keep them out. You don't put onions in the fridge. You don't put garlic in the fridge. You don't put potatoes in the fridge. I think I said that. You can put carrots in the fridge. You can put avocados in the fridge. Keep them there because they'll stay. And then if you know you're going to use one the next day or the day after, you take it out of the fridge and let it ripen. If you can stay out of the store and do one main shopping, you will not believe the money you're going to have in the bank. And isn't that why we're here in this class? Isn't that what Tiffany's doing and the rest of the gang? They're trying to teach all of us how to be budget friendly and how to have a quality of life. So this is my meal plan. This is something that I came up with over 40 years ago. I'm still living it today, still living my rules. I don't eat red meat back to back. I include fish or meatless at least twice a week in my meal plan. I eat pasta once a week. I don't eat bread 3 times a day. But I would never live without bread, be without bread. And if you're gluten-free, I have gluten-free recipes. I could never live without the staff of life of bread. I meet people who haven't had bread in 2 years, and I'm like, how? How do you do that? They forgot how to chew. They forgot how to chew. Because when you eat bread, you have to chew. What's another food nanny rule? One of probably the most important is portion control. We eat everything in portion control. We eat until we're satisfied and we push our plate back when we're satisfied, not stuffed or full. Then we can have some sweets. And for those of you who don't believe in sweets and have kids, you need to teach your kids how to eat sweets. Because if you don't, they go to college and they start binging on sweets because they've never eaten them. It's just like any kind of food. If you deny yourself of any food, once in a while we start to binge. One of the big things right now in our country is women are afraid of food. They're afraid to eat. They're afraid of getting fat. That's the number one reason. They're afraid of almost eating anything because it's going to be bad or it's going to make them fat or it's going to whatever. I say to eat 3 times a day. If you try to skip a meal, what's going to happen? Anybody know?
You get really hungry.
You don't make it to the next meal. So what do you end up doing?
Eating.
Eating what? Junk. Eating chips. Eating donuts. Eating anything you can get your hands on because you're so hungry. You have to eat something now. You can't make it to the next meal. So we never skip a meal. And another thing is, dinner time's super important. Because this is a time where we can really relax. Even if you're cooking for yourself, you deserve a meaningful dinner time. But this is where we come at the end of the day. Hopefully we get together with our friends or our family, those that we love and care about. We look each other in the eye, and we sit down and we have something hot, delicious, nutritionally sound, and we eat together, and we enjoy it. Hopefully you've made a decent table setting that looks nice. Hopefully you've taken time to buy some decent plates. You can get them everywhere, so inexpensive. Some decent glasses so that it calls you to the table. Dinner time is where we connect. It's the one time in America and becoming throughout the world now. In Europe, it used to be in the middle of the day, but it's not so much anymore because the world is working most all day long. So the world is coming back for dinner. This is where we connect. This is where we sort out and talk over the day. This is where we get to know one another. This is where we can heal a husband and wife. We can heal children. We get to know children. Columbia University did a massive, massive deal on dinner time study. They found out if you cook at least 3 meals a week, your kids will be less prone to get into drugs, alcohol, smoking. They've proven that they will talk to their parents more. They will confide in their parents. They're going to get better grades. They're going to have better nutrition. The list is this mile long, is a mile long. It's so long. If you just have 3 meals a week with your family. The Food Nanny says to cook 5 nights a week, whatever 5 nights you choose, and take 2 days off. Now, could I always take 2 days off the first 20 years of marriage? No. I didn't have the money. The weather was bad. My husband was gone. I didn't want to leave the house to go out and eat. So I didn't always take 2 days off, but the meal plan, my meal plan says, take 2 days off. Bring a meal in once. Give yourself a break. Have a leftover night. Go out. We all love fast food. I love it too. Go out for pizza on Friday. If I'm not home making homemade pizza, I'm out eating it out. So that's a fun night. But if I'm cooking nutritionally sound meals, I know what's going into my food. I know what's going into my body. I can eat pasta. I can eat everything I love and crave. I'm not denying myself of anything because I'm eating with portion control. And I'm eating 3 times a day. And I'm not denying myself of anything because I'm satisfied after I've eaten. I don't get fat-free cream cheese or fat-free sour cream or fat-free anything. I'm using quality ingredients that are going to help me be satisfied. So then I push my plate back. I'm satisfied. I can have a little dessert. When we go out to eat, we should share our food. One of the biggest problems with women is they eat too much at lunch. So mom's not hungry at dinner, and she's not going to cook. So everybody gets home, and by the way, moms, we still own dinner time. Women still own it. But you're not alone to cook it. You can delegate it. Dad has a night. Joey has a night. Amy has a night. You have a night. But somebody has to be in charge, and moms still own it. Because why? Women, we are still the nurturers. And we're still the ones who's responsible for the nutrition in the family. It's still worldwide that way. But if you're lucky enough to have married a guy who knows how to cook, or a partner who knows how to cook, good for you. Wow, you're doing good. But women still sort of own it. That's a statistical fact. So, do you know that probably one of the most important things you can teach your children in your whole life is how to eat? It's probably more important almost than a million subjects. Well, I know it's as important as learning how to read or write. How to eat. Because if you teach them how to eat, they'll never see a diet for the rest of their life. Because there's no such thing as a diet. Because diets don't work long term. It's a lifestyle. It's how you decide to feed yourself. And it doesn't matter what size you are or how much you weigh for men or women. All it matters is if you feel healthy. And if you're strong. If you can go climb that mountain or walk 5 miles or do whatever. It's how you feel. You eat and eat until you're satisfied. Don't eat until you're stuffed or full. But what I'm saying is, nobody's telling you how much to weigh, how much you should weigh, or how much you should eat, or what size you are. It's how you feel. Everybody's individual. But get the nutrients into your body. So, I'm going to talk to you for a minute about, I believe, the greatest grain in the world. Has anybody ever heard of Kamut? Raise your hand. K-A-M-U-T. It's an ancient grain. It's all I've eaten for 3 years. When I finally started working with it, because I'm working with all kinds of food, when I first started working with it, I fell in love instantly. I practiced with spelt. Anybody know much about ancient grains? Well, they're fabulous for you. Our regular hard red winter wheat is nothing like this. It's nothing as nutritionally sound. It's nothing as delicious. This is delicious. And it's so much more nutritionally sound than any other ordinary average wheat. You will die. For one thing, it's longer, it's more beautiful. The color is kind of yellowish, but the product, and I want all of you to come up afterwards. These are my French baguettes. I'm going to show you how to make them in just a minute. This is my go-to bread for 45 years. This is my go-to bread. The reason is because from start to finish, you can make it in 30 minutes. And this is made with Kamut. Probably, I believe, the best grain in the world for you nutritionally and taste. It's a winner. It's unbelievable. It's off the charts. Anybody gluten-free? You can probably tolerate it. Italy is buying 70% of all the kamut grown in America, which is in the Dakotas and in Montana, a little bit in Idaho. They're buying 70% of all the kamut grown here. And the reason is because they've got people in their country who need to eat pasta. They need to eat bread and pizza, and they're using kamut. And many, many, many of their gluten-free people can eat it. Now, if you have celiac, no, because you can't eat any grain. But gluten, do you have celiac? Okay, well, that's different. Gluten-free people can tolerate it. So if you have a little bit of a stomach problem that you think because all of these grains that are out there have been mixed and modified in pesticides coming down on them and everything, so many problems with wheat now, this is 100% natural, 100% pure kamut. Comes from a handful of grain that was given to a serviceman over in Egypt who took it to Montana and started growing it. Then they kind of petered out. Then his dad started growing it. His dad petered out. Then he started growing it, and it was his son that just said, this is so delicious and so good for you. I'm going to make my career, my life. This is my life, kamut. When I found it, I felt so lucky because I hadn't experimented with before. 10 years ago, you'd never even heard of kamut. It's only been around 17 years in the U.S. It's been, anybody know about the Khorasan Valley? Any history majors in here? The Khorasan Valley, which is over in Turkey, the bottom where they think Noah's Ark. You know the story of Noah. They think Noah's Ark actually landed on Mount Ararat. Well, in the Khorasan Valley, they grow kamut, which is at the bottom of Mount Ararat. And they believe that this could have been the grain, if there was a Noah, that he had. Because this is growing in the Khorasan Valley and has been for over 2,000 years, forever. It's an ancient grain that's amazing. I'm going to tell you one of my other favorite ingredients. So I make nothing. Everything I want you to come up and taste afterwards, my bread, it's made with kamut, white kamut. Whole kamut, the brown I call it. So there's a brown and there's a white. So just like at home, I have my whole wheat before, and I have my all-purpose white flour. Now I dump out my all-purpose white flour, and all I have is white kamut. And then in my other big jar, I just have the brown kamut. So this is made with white kamut. I love the brown kamut in my regular bread. It's amazing. But the white kamut I use in everything. Every cookie, every cake, every pie, everything in my house. And I want you to come and taste it. It will up the quality of your life. You're in so many factors I can't even begin to tell you. The other thing that I am in love with that I want to share with you, and then we're going to cook a little something. This is my salt box. Anybody, when you go to Europe and you visit the castles, you go to the castles and you always see the little salt over on the side in the kitchen. And you can hardly get a hand in there. And there's a reason for that. Salt was coveted because you could hardly get it. It was one of those spices you had to have, but it was so expensive and so rare and so tough to get out in some of these towns that are so far away from a big city. So this is my salt box. It's my little, I love it so much because it has the salt that I can't live without. I was into studying salts, and I came across this one. It's from Guérin, France, from the Brittany part of France, region of France, and it is, in my opinion, the #1 salt in the world. You can look it up. You can see what the high marks are on it. It's incredible. It's 100% natural. It comes from a salt farm that the monks over 1,000 years ago went there and actually formed them, but the actual farm has been there over 2,000 years. It is because of the way the sun comes in and the way the ocean comes in, that this salt farm is just, it's just amazing. Depends on how much sun they get per year, how much salt they can even produce. They can even gather. So what they do is, back in the day, 1,000 years ago, they hire women, and they come out with rakes, and they rake the top layer of these salt farms. And you get something called fleur de sel. Anybody ever heard of it? Fleur de sel. It's the top layer of the salt, okay? This is the finest salt in the world. And come up and taste it. You're gonna die. Yes, there's a difference, and it's so good for you. I could never open a box of Morton salt again after I met some of the salts that I have met in the world. I can't do it. That stuff is processed. It's so concentrated. This is 100% pure, and there's no drying agent in it because it's kind of wet. So this is the top layer. So it's more fine. It's for finishing on top of pizza, putting it on salads or eggs, or you can put it in anything. This one is past the top layer, so you rake down. It's the second and third layers, and it's closer to clay. So it's gray. Come up and taste it. And it's much larger in coarseness. It's much larger. So what do you do with it this coarse? I use it just as is in almost everything I bake, but if I need it more, I just get me a sea salt grinder. That one is from Germany. This one is actually from World Market right here. Very inexpensive. Sea salt grinder. So this salt you can use however you want. This happens to be one of my very favorite salt. I got this one in Germany. They actually had this on a table in a restaurant full of fleur de sel. And I asked her if I could buy it, and she sold it to me. I love my salt box because these salts make my cooking. They also make who I am, my health, my strength. I love it because of the meaning behind all of this. And when you get into cooking, you start to feel it. You want to keep cooking, and you want to be the one in charge of your food. You want to be the one choosing the ingredients for a reason, because it becomes a lifestyle for you. It becomes your lifestyle. And you will never again go hungry. And what I mean by that, because America is well fed, but America is not nutritionally well fed. And you'll never go hungry when you start cooking yourself, because you'll be nutritionally sound. Okay, let me show you really quick how to make my French baguettes. From start to finish, I've been doing my French baguettes for 45 years, and they're my go-to bread, and the reason is because when I make this bread, I can make sandwiches. I can make it just to go with other food. The next day, I can open it up like a sandwich, or open it up to spread olive oil and Parmesan cheese, or maybe butter it, put it under the broiler. Look at this bread inside. Look how amazingly dense and soft. It's amazing. And yet on the outside, we can have it more crisp. From start to finish, in my book, I tell you it's 45 minutes. But when you get good at it, 30 minutes. And if you've got 72 degrees in your kitchen, 30 minutes, no problem. So I want you to come up and taste it because it's made with Kamut. My whole life, a true French baguette is made with all-purpose flour. Now when you go to France, you can find multi-grain, you can find every kind of baguette with every kind of flour. But in the beginning, it's made, and still the Julia Child's famous recipes are made with all-purpose flour. And that's what I've been making this for years. When I found my Kamut, my bread just went over the moon. In health and taste, amazing. Yes, I used to do it in wheat, but it tasted nothing this good. Nothing. Half and half wheat. I've used whole wheat my whole life, obviously. But these ancient grains are amazing. We need to take advantage of them. So what we need is we need a half a cup of warm water. Now, you'll notice as I'm making this bread that there's no preservative in it. I don't believe in putting any preservative in any bread. But there's no, extra preservatives. But what I mean by this preservative is there's no oil or butter in this bread. So it's really good for you too. Because a preservative, what it does is it makes oil or butter makes the bread last a little bit longer. French baguettes are made for today. When you go to France, they're taking them down out of the bakeries and out of the store every 3 hours because they're meant to be eaten fresh. But the next day I told you how you can revive it by putting some olive oil or butter if you don't eat it all. Make French toast the next morning. Okay, so we're gonna have a half a cup of water. And to that, we're gonna add yeast. Is anybody familiar with buying yeast like this? You can buy it at Costco for about $5. This is the yeast that I love. We're gonna take a tablespoon and a half of yeast. This costs $5. It'll last you for months. Double baggy it, keep it in the freezer. It'll last for 2 years in the freezer. We're gonna take a teaspoon of sugar, and then we're just going to barely cover it like this. We're not gonna stir it like that. We're just gonna do this. Very softly, kind of cover. And then I like to put a little plate on top to keep the warmth in. I don't know what the degrees are in here, so we'll see if the yeast starts to come up. It's a really super easy way. If you have a thermometer, we want our yeast to be 105 to 115. That's good. That's perfect yeast. Anybody can do this. I have 10 and 11-year-olds making my French baguettes. I have more men than women making them. So everybody's making the French baguettes, especially with the Kamut flour. Now, it's amazing. Okay, then we're gonna take our bowl right here, and we're gonna add 1 more teaspoon of sugar and 2 tablespoons of salt. And I'm just gonna take the salt right out of the bag. I keep this salt in a ceramic container at home. I was taught to use this salt just as is, but I found so many different ways now to get it what texture I like it best. And then, of course, the fleur de sel is already a less texture. It's whatever you like. People taste my cakes and my cookies, and they say, "What is that? That salt is so delicious." So if you like it kind of chunky, try it. If not, you can buy this, by the way, at World Market. Last time I was in Europe, I brought so much home, and I didn't know that World Market sold it, and I think Harmon sells it, and Food Nanny's even gonna sell it. So be watching for me. Now this is, we've got everything we need in this bowl. Now I've got my Kamut flour here, and the recipe calls for about 3 1/4 cups. But you never know, so this is how I teach all of my bread and pizza dough, which I'll show you in a minute. So we have 2 cups. Let's put 2 1/2 cups in and see where we're at. It's much easier to add flour than water when you're making bread. So don't ever, if a recipe says 3 1/4 cups, don't put 3 1/4 cups in there. If a recipe says 7 to 9 cups flour, don't put 7 or 9 cups in there. Let's go easy on the flour. It depends on what kind of flour you're using. Depends on where it was grown, depends on the weather. Let's go easy on the flour always. And in my cooking classes, I only teach you how to make breads by hand. There are bread makers. There are Bosch. There's something called a Bosch, which I love. There's something called a KitchenAid, which you can use. But you need to learn to make bread by hand first. So that, not everybody has those tools. And I don't even bother using them half the time. Okay, so let's see. Okay, the yeast is coming up. Now, if I were to let it sit there, for 5 to 10 minutes, it would rise to here, even in this room today. But I'm not going to for time, and you don't need to. We can pour it right in, right now. Now we're gonna add up to 1 cup of warm water, same as what we did with the other. So we're gonna pour that in. So we've got everything we need in here. We're gonna add up to 1 cup of water, and we'll see how much more, flour we're going to add. So this is the rule. Once we add our water and we see that it's too sticky, then we add some more flour. The rule is this: when the flour comes away from the sides of the bowl, we know we have enough flour. This is coming away, but it's a little too sticky. So as soon as it all comes like this, away from the sides of the bowl, we know we're good. Don't add any more flour. And this is gonna go for any kind of bread like this. Is anyone familiar with artisan bread? Artisan bread is different. Artisan bread, my artisan bread in my books, I mix up all together. I don't start the yeast different. I put the yeast and the water and the right amount of flour. In an artisan bread, if it calls for 3 1/4 cups flour, add 3 1/4 cups flour. Mix it all up and let it go. But in this kind of a bread, you wouldn't do that. With a French baguette or just normal everyday bread or Italian bread. An artisan bread is different. But for a normal bread like this is how you would do it. Now we'll put a little bit of flour out on the surface. Doesn't matter if you're having wood out on your surface, get a goodly amount of flour out there. Or if you've got granite or tile, it doesn't matter what your surface is. Just make sure it's clean. This is a little bit sticky, but it's fine. It's much better to be sticky, because the biggest mistake every single person makes when making homemade bread is it has way too much flour. It's like a brick. You have to understand that the less amount of flour you can use, the better the bread, okay? But we have to write a recipe. We have to give you an idea, and we live here in a very dry climate. So we're gonna take sometimes less than, say, Florida or California. Sometimes we're gonna take less. Now we're just gonna knead it right out here like this. Now you're gonna make a homemade baguette, and it's gonna cost you about 20 cents. And the cheapest baguette you can buy is about $1.99, and at Whole Foods they go up to $7, depending on what kind of grain it's made with. They get it. They get $7 for one. And you're gonna make it for 20 to 25 because this is Kamut, and Kamut is expensive. But it doesn't matter because you're already going and buying coffee at Starbucks, and we're already buying treats everywhere and everything and paying a fortune. So just cut back a little bit on some of that and buy yourself some amazing ingredients. The reason why Kamut is more expensive, it's like almond flour. The reason why is because it gets half the yield of any normal, ordinary wheat, half the yield. So it's very expensive, but worth it. Especially if you're feeding, doesn't matter who you're feeding, it's the quality in which you're feeding. When you're using normal, everyday, all-purpose flour, you're getting empty calories. What I told you before, America is well fed, but America is not well nutritionally fed. And so this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring people back to the dinner table nutritionally fed. And this is what I've been trying to do for 15 years. Show them the importance of dinner time. You're gonna save so much money. You're gonna be eating quality food. Your lifestyle is going to go like this, because when you do dinner, everybody's happier, and you're going to stay in a much better health range. especially with portion control, you're going to be able to control your food. Okay, we just give it a quick knead just like that. It's not sticking to this anymore, so I know I have enough flour. So because it's not sticking here, I know I have enough. So now I'm going to divide it in half. This is a great tool. If you don't have one, go get one. It's one of the best tools you'll ever buy, especially if you're going to get into bread baking. And nothing makes anyone, I don't care who you are in the world, happier than hot bread. Nothing. The smells coming from the kitchen, you create a safety in your home for your children, your partner, your spouse. You create memories. And that's what cooking, eating good quality food creates. It's a quality of lifestyle you can't put a price on. Now, we're rolling it and we're pushing from the inside out. Now, I have a baguette pan here. This is like 45 years old. And I was doing it before I found this pan years and years ago. I was doing it side by side on a baking sheet, which you can. You don't need this pan. You just look super professional and fun. It's super fun to go and get some kitchen tools that make cooking fun. So these are the baguette pans. You can take to your neighbors, your friends. They'll say, "What is that?" And you'll say, "That's my famous baguettes." Now we're just going to put them like this. Now, I lay them like this, and then we take a knife, and we just cut a little bit down like this. And then we just let it raise. It's only one rise. We let it raise, and we have hot bread. We're going to cook it at 425 to 450 for 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Everybody's ovens are different. So I've been in so many homes, everybody's ovens are different, 10 to 15 minutes, about like that. How do we know when it is risen enough? This is the next big mistake. You have to watch your bread, because if it rises too much, it falls the second you get it in the oven. And it's not pretty, like this. We don't want it to fall. So what we want to do is we want to check it, and we'll check it in just a little bit. And I'll show you the trick to knowing when it goes in the oven. Now the next thing I want to teach you, we've got 5 minutes. Do you want me to show you a 5-minute pizza dough or not? Should we, or should we quit?
Yes. One of the things I wanted to know was, how did you raise 7 children and feed them every night on a budget?
This, the only way. If I hadn't have had this, I would have been eating chili or spaghetti or tacos every night. Because in my meal plan, I have 20, 25 recipes under each of these nights. And I'm just doing my rules. So every one of my kids know how to eat. They're all healthy. They know how to eat sweets. They know how to eat vegetables. They know how to do it all because they were raised with this and they're still living it. I have given this talk as much as 30 and 40 years ago when I started it, and every once in a while I'll hear from a person from that long ago, and they'll say, "Thank you. All of my kids know how to eat, and now all of their kids know how to eat." This is how I did it. If I hadn't have had this, I couldn't have done it. I would have been grilled cheese every night, because at 4 o'clock it's too late to figure out what to eat. But when you go to the store once every 2 weeks, you bring your groceries home, you have it, and your day is going crazy. You know what's on the menu. You have everything in the house, so you fix it, right? You never go wrong. And then if your day goes completely to pot, and say you're having beef stew with dumplings, but you don't have time to finish the beef stew because that happens to be a recipe, most of my recipes are 30 minutes, happens to be a recipe that takes a little more time, you fall back on pancakes or waffles, homemade, that take 2 seconds to whip up. But it's still nutritionally sound, especially when you're using a flour like this. So that was my fallback meal. Homemade pancakes, homemade waffles. Then I would either make it and freeze it the next day and continue on with my plan. There's so many things I could teach, freezer meals, everything, but we don't have time. Do you want to see the pizza dough? Yes or no? Okay. So the pizza dough is super easy too. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a cup of water this time. This is my pizza dough recipe. This is my basic pizza dough. From start to finish, 5 minutes. You can use it after that. You can also let it sit all day long. I don't care. But I needed a pizza dough that when I got home from the ball games with all these kids, and it's Friday night, and they want their friends to come over, not necessarily to spend the night, but to eat. Then I'm making pizza, and I need a dough now. So I came up with this dough recipe that works now. And it's homemade, it's nutritionally sound, it's amazing. This is how I keep my yeast in the fridge. I keep it in a little jar like this. You can just get a canning jar, whatever, put a lid on it. I keep a little in the fridge, and then I keep my main one in the freezer. But I have some ready to go, always in the fridge. So all we're gonna do is add a tablespoon of yeast to 1 cup of water. We're not gonna add any sugar to it. A lot of people say, my yeast just doesn't work. Well, you've got the wrong temperature. All you need is 105 to 115. That is a big swath. You can figure that out. It's not that hard, just don't get it too hot. You get it too hot, your yeast is dead. 120 degrees is too hot. So now we're going to add a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So my 3 top ingredients in my home are Kamut, my salt, and my olive oil. My favorite olive oil on earth is from Portugal. I can't get it. They won't ship it here. It's very difficult to get. My second is from Sicily, and I love one from California. So this one that I'm using today, I just grabbed at Costco not too long ago, and it's fine. But olive oil, those should be your 3 top ingredients in your house, and honey. If you hate honey, then find another substitute. There's a few different substitutes out there, but this is a raw food, a raw sweetener, and I love it. I love to use it in my pizza dough. I use it in my bread in place of sugar because honey is so good for you as well. My whole Kamut, my white or brown Kamut, my salt, my olive oil, honey is another top ingredient. Okay, now we're going to use a little bit of salt, just 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, to make this pizza dough. Okay? Now we're going to add up to 3 to 4 cups of flour. So our yeast is almost ready to go. So I'll just put a little bit. Here's 2. Today is taking more flour. Today. So I don't know why, but this is why. It's weather, it's crazy things, crazy different things. Every day is different when you're making bread or like pizza dough. So we're gonna mix this up. Same rules. Remember those rules? When it comes away from the sides of the bowl, we know we have enough flour. I have so many people emailing me, Liz, your pizza dough is not good. It's not working. Well, what have you done? Everybody, it's not coming together. It's not binding. Well, you have to read the recipe and the instructions. Now this is enough flour. I'm gonna put a little more flour out here. It said 3 to 4 cups. This will be the fastest pizza dough you ever made. I have people going to Harmon's, going to different places that sell pizza dough, getting in their car to run to get dough that's going to take them a half an hour to get back home, or 10 minutes or whatever it is, when they can make pizza dough in 5 minutes. Just going to give it a quick knead like this. Now, after you bring it together, let the yeast and the gluten come together. I had one professional chef say to me, but Liz, you shouldn't be using it right now. You should let it rest, put it in the bowl, cover it, with a little olive oil and let it rest. You can, but I have made it for so long that I'm telling you it's perfect to do in 5 minutes. Or you can put it in the bowl and let it rest. I don't care if it's all day. It doesn't matter. But you can also use it in 5 minutes. So you can see, now what I did was I actually forgot my rolling pin, which I don't know how I did that. So this dough recipe will make one 16-inch medium crust. Now I haven't used these pizza pans in years. When I was doing pizza that I explained back in the beginning, nobody was making homemade pizza. I didn't know anyone who even dreamt of making homemade pizza, let alone finding a pizza pan. I was first making it on another baking sheet, and then years and years, 40 years ago, I went to Pizza Hut, and they sold me 5 pans. But then I got into using a stone or tiles or something else, and that's what I use at home. But this makes one 16-inch medium crust pizza, which is what I raise my kids on. Or you can make 2 to 3 out of this thin crust, okay? I have another pizza dough recipe in my book. It's an Italian recipe that my second book, I actually went to Italy and wrote most of it there. I'm gonna use this just to show you that you can use anything. We were in Denver. We had a great big cooking class over there with some of the Bronco team. And the one girl, they left the cooking class and she had to make the pizza dough that night. So she showed it on her Instagram and she was using a jar too. Now in Italy, this is actually where I found the Kamut for the second time, was in Italy, eating pizza. And I said, that is the best pizza dough I have ever eaten. So I came home, I tried to create the same thing with my Kamut and my pizza dough. So this will go, so you can put this on a cookie sheet, you can put it on a pizza pan. I would put a little bit of olive oil down for this. My other recipe is strictly for thin crust. You can get 6 to 12 out of the other recipe. In Italy, they get it so thin, it's as thin as this paper. But that's the way I love it. And I bet a lot of you like it that thin too. And you can do that. So, are there any questions? What I wanted to do today is to let you know that budget, we're all on a budget. Doesn't matter how much money you have. We're on a budget. We can't spend whatever we want. And so my whole life, I was on a food budget. And I had to figure out how to make that work. And it was my meal plan that became a lifestyle that saved my life. I'm still living it today. If I'm out having dinner, I'm still hungry. It's the variety of food that keeps you healthy. Mixed in with veggies, some sweets. I said, share a sweet when you go out. Share a piece of cake. Share a dinner. Everybody doesn't need their own dinner at a lot of these restaurants, these Mexican restaurants. It doesn't matter what restaurant. Often it's way too much food. Share your food. Share the cost. Then share a dessert. And don't eat big lunches so that you can come home at the end of the day and make dinner for yourself. And make it into a ritual that's going to mean something with delicious ingredients and quality food. I always tell people, my family eats better when I'm hungry. So if I'm always full and my family's always hungry, that's not going to work. That's not going to work for any of us. So for those who are in charge of dinner time, we have to be hungry in order to cook. And that means we have to watch our portions for breakfast and lunch and a snack in the afternoon. It's amazing the quality of life that you will have if you begin a meal plan. This is not a gimmick. I've been living it over 40 years, and I will never go back because my body craves all of these different foods all the time. Remember I told you there's a trick to knowing when your bread is ready. I don't care what bread it is, unless it's artisan bread, and that even still holds true with artisan bread on this part of it. We give the bread a poke, and if it sticks, it's ready for the oven. If it doesn't come back at you, it's ready to go into the oven. And if there was an oven here, we would be putting this in the oven. And it would be beautiful. At my cooking class the other night, we got talking, and we let the bread rise far too long. It was super warm in there, and so the bread fell, and it went flat. So that's a very, very good rule to know. Okay, so if anybody wants to join my Instagram, I also have something for you. If you can show me that you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I have my famous tablespoon and teaspoon. And on the next is a half a tablespoon and a fourth. It's all I use. It's all I've used for 10 years. It's all you need. So if you'd like to follow me and my Instagram and my daughter, I'd like to give you one of those. So any more questions? Yes?
How do these recipes freeze, and at what point do you freeze them?
Okay, you mean the bread?
The bread and the dough.
Okay, so these, I want you to come up and taste, by the way. These freeze up to 2 months incredibly. Meat will freeze over a year or more. But bread you don't want more than 2 or 3 months. But these freeze like you just made them when you get them out. If you put them back into the oven, cover it with foil, and warm it up. It's amazing. The pizza dough, what I like, you can freeze the dough right now after you've made it, just as is. You can put it into 3 different balls and put it into Ziploc bags, 3 different balls, or freeze 1 ball like this. Just let it unthaw, come to room temperature, then roll it out. You can freeze it like that. What I like to do is I like to bake it off for 30 seconds on each side, then put it in a baggie like this and stack those in my freezer. And then I get those out of the freezer, and all I have to do is dress them with whatever I want and bake them. That's the way I like to freeze my pizza. Any recipe in my book, you can freeze anything, including mashed potatoes, including cooked spaghetti. You can freeze it. You just put it in the freezer, and you get it out and unthaw it, and you warm the spaghetti up in the microwave or put it in a little more hot water. Potatoes you microwave up. You can freeze anything. And you can use your freezer as a pantry, so there's never any waste. When you go to the grocery store now without a meal plan, and especially if you go hungry, all you're buying is what you're hungry for. But it makes no sense because you think you're going to use it. You think, oh, I'm going to make that tomorrow, or I'm going to make this tonight. You end up making none of it. And it all goes to waste because you're just not sure. We have so much to do in the day. The hardest part is trying to figure out what to cook. So when you go home, you have your meal plan on your fridge. You know exactly what you're cooking. Even if you decide to cook on Monday and have enough for Tuesday, then you go to Wednesday. Maybe you cook on Wednesday and have enough for Thursday. Then maybe the next week you cook on Tuesday and have enough for Wednesday. Cook here and do this. There's every kind of way to make it work for you. Every kind. Maybe you just want to choose 3 nights a week and cook. I had a family that I food nannied. Every single Monday, she made a huge pot of spaghetti sauce and a huge pot of chili. And she said, there, this is, when you get home, kids, you can make some noodles to go with it, or here's chili. This is the week's food. And every single night, Dad was going out the back door to another fast food restaurant. He's not eating that every week. And the kids are sick of it, and the pots are still full by the end of the week because nobody wants it. So they're living on cereal, sandwiches, whatever they can find. There's no nutritional value anywhere because they're so sick of all this same food. But that was Mom's way of doing it. So she had me come and help her how to figure out how she could make something. She just didn't know. She didn't know where to start or begin. Any more questions? Great. I hope you'll all take some of my advice. Yes?
Was there honey in the bread dough? The pizza dough?
Yes. 1 tablespoon. So you can use honey or sugar. I use honey. Any other questions? Come up, please, and have some bread and butter. I made this morning for you so that you could taste it. I want to thank Tiffany for inviting me to the U. I love coming over here. So thank you for having me.